Warning, this podcast contains descriptions of murder, torture and abuse. As a result, it may not be suitable for everybody. Amsterdam, Netherlands. One of the most liberal cities in the world, famous for its canals, beautiful architecture and houses, coffee shops and red light district. Listen to the hometown murder cases of Marianne Vestra, whose rape and murder became one of the most high-profile cases in Dutch history. Willem Van Eijk, a serial killer known as the Beast of Harkstede and Willem Hollender, who kidnapped the president of Heineken for 16 million euros and went on to kill 6 other people. The first hometown murder case we're looking at today is the murder of Marianne Vestra. She was born the 10th of August 1982 and she was raped and murdered. This became one of the most high-profile criminal cases in the Netherlands. Vestra was just 16 years old when she was last seen alive cycling from Cologne to her parents' house today in De Vesteren. Her body was found the next day in a field close by and her throat was slit. Trace of the perpetrator's blood and semen was also found at the scene. The blame was quickly pointed to inhabitants of the local asylum seekers refuge and a riot against asylum seekers ensued. The murder was a cold case until it was reopened in 2012 with a large-scale DNA profiling in the area around the crime scene. This led to the local arrest of a farmer, Jasper Sterngenger, on the 8th of November of that year. He confessed to the rape and murder and was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment. The case was one of the first in the country to be resolved mainly by using DNA evidence, and this led to widespread debate about the use of DNA for criminal investigations. The population of Cologne was quick to blame inhabitants of the local asylum seekers centre for the murder. The centre's security was upgraded and riot police were readied in the weeks following the murder to intervene in the case of fighting between locals and refugees. At a municipal information meeting in October 1999 about the opening of a new centre in the town, locals rioted with Cologne youth egging the mayor. At least one woman who had incited the riots were convicted for a racist offence. At first, a sentence for a 32-year-old man from Zagwinstein was arrested in late May 1999 but was subsequently released because his DNA did not match that found at the crime scene. He would become the first in a series of 12 suspects who were similarly arrested and then released. From August 1999, police investigation of Vestra's murder focuses on the asylum seekers centre near Cologne. The centre's guards had reported that an Iraqi refugee had left the centre on the night of the murder and had been missing since. He was tracked down by Interpol and arrested in Istanbul in October, but the investigation became a national controversy after an official of the Public Prosecution Services had stated the arrest was made under political pressure. The Iraqi was found innocent of the murder by DNA evidence. In 2012, a final decision was made to open an asylum seekers refuge at the planned location without drawing local protests. A DNA sweep was started in December 1999, initially targeting 170 men in the area, of whom 162 cooperated. No match was found. The following year, investigators published a psychological profile of the perpetrator, who they suspected to be of white Eastern European male living less than 15 kilometres from the crime scene. Eventually the case was closed, then reopened in 2002 for a year before closing again. The Public Prosecution Service had arrested at least 12 subjects. DNA was collected from more than 900 people as part of a DNA investigation. The murder got a lot of attention from the local press. A theme that was mentioned a lot was that they suspected the murderer could be a civilian from the refugee camp nearby. 2 asylum seekers from Iraq and Afghanistan became suspects, but based on a genetic fingerprint DNA profiling, they were no longer suspects. In May 2006, Member of Parliament Hibret Negem called to reinvestigate the police analysis. In June 2007 and in June 2010, Member of Parliament Tred Teven asked questions about the case during a meeting. Also, the television programme Peter R. de Vries, Misadventurous Ligever, took a lot of time to investigate on the case. On the 29th of September 2012, a DNA test was started in a 5-kilometre radius of the crime scene, in which about 8,000 males participated. The investigation was based on a free will. They were looking for men with a Y chromosome DNA profile like the perpetrator. This resulted in a DNA match. On 18th of November, Jasper Sterngenger, a 45-year-old, only 2.5 kilometres from the crime scene, was arrested. The suspect consented to a sample. On the 6th of December, he confessed to the murder. On the 9th night of the May 1st, 1999, Jasper saw Vestra on her bike. He stated he did not know her. Jasper forced Vestra with a knife into the field where she later was found dead. On September the 29th, 2012, police began a DNA relationship testing in a 5k radius of the crime scene, approximately 8,000 men. In this study, on a voluntary basis, police studied whether there were people who had a similar chromosome, if they could find a match with familiar DNA to trace the killer. On November 9th, 2012, police announced it had found a match. Jasper Sterngenger was arrested. He did not voluntarily speak to the police, but within 10 minutes of meeting his lawyer, he admitted to murdering Vestra. In a packed courtroom, Jasper described how he grabbed Vestra as she walked along a path in Venkalusta. On the night of April the 30th, 1999, now 45, he said he'd hit by a sudden thought, "You're mine." He pulled out a knife, seized the girl and raped her before strangling her with her own bra. He then slit her throat with 3 strokes of the knife. Quote, "I didn't know where that came from." End quote. He told the court on the first day of the hearing to outline the facts of the case. Quote, "I've never had the thought before or since. My conscience switched off. I didn't know how or why. The killing was an act of panic, and when he realised the consequences of being caught for rape, he said, I just thought of my family and the discovery of what happened after that. It hit me at once." End quote. The murder of Vestra sparked a huge police hunt and sent shockwaves through the quiet Frisian community. The only clue was a cigarette lighter found at the scene, which had bought locally and contained a trace of the killer's DNA. He told the court he'd chosen to keep it quiet to save his young children from the experience of growing up with a trial father in prison. In the last 13 years, I considered several times whether to go to the police, but every time we could see much uproar the case had caused in the press. He said it destroyed her family. I couldn't change that. I decided to spare my family the pain. My children were 5 and 8 years old at the time. But he realised that it was a matter of time before the court past caught up with him, and when police finally gained permission for the unprecedented large-scale DNA sweep, Jasper consented to give a sample, knowing that he would otherwise be identified through close relatives. Even as his unmasking became inevitable, he admitted that he lacked the courage to go to the police to confess to the crime. Instead, he waited 6 months for the results to confirm that he knew, and the moment that it came on the night of December 18th last year. when police arrived at his farm to arrest him for Vestra's murder. Sterngenger's trial opened on the March the 28th. The public prosecutor asked for a 20-year sentence for the perpetrator. On the 19th of April 2013, the court sentenced Sterngenger to a term of 18 years in prison for the rape and murder of Vestra. The second hometown murder case we're looking at is Willem Van Eijk. He was born August 1941 and was a convicted Dutch serial killer known as the Beast of Harkstede. He was convicted twice for a total of 5 murders. Willem was born in 1941 in the small village of Kurtera, South Holland, then under during occupation of the Netherlands. During his time at elementary school in Ter Aar, he was an outcast and referred to as Crazy Little Willem, something he later used to justify his actions. During this time of extreme bullying, Willem started to collect morbid items such as dead bugs and frogs. He soon gained notoriety in his home village for his cruelty towards animals, especially dogs, cats and ducks. Still a loner when attending high school, Van Eijk committed petty crimes. During this time, he started to dream about raping and killing women. In 1971, he picked up the 15-year-old Cora Mantel from Utrecht. Having missed her bus after meeting her boyfriend in Amsterdam, Van Eijk found her hitchhiking. He raped and strangled her with her own shawl. He then dumped her body in a nearby ditch. Her body was found on the 22nd of June 1971. Because on the morning of the murder she was to start a job at a jewellery store in Aarsmeer, the jeweller was for a short period of time a suspect. Elja van der Vlat, on the 19th of August 1970, found her lifeless body was found. She was 43-year-old and found near the roadside in a cornfield. She had suffered multiple stab wounds, her belly was ripped open and her left nipple was cut off. Willem lived in a houseboat named the Freedom at the end of the road. Several witnesses have seen Van Eijk ride his moped on the evening of the body was found near the area where the body was eventually discovered. The police arrested Van Eijk and he immediately confessed to the murders of Cora and Elch. In 1972, Wilhelm was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment and TBS. The murders and details were all revealed during the court and were so astonishing the public that several judiciary guards vomited. Psychiatric reports explain that Van Eijk had severe childhood trauma as a result of bullying and rejection by women. During his therapy, psychiatrists speculated his deviant behaviour was a result of brain damage sustained during his birth. In 1980, while still in reprimand, he married his pen friend Adrie. In 1990 he was released and together they moved into a house in Harkstede. Psychiatrists believe his relationship with Adrie would prevent him from re-offending, but warned that subsequent female rejections could trigger a relapse. The relationship turned out to be a downward spiral for Van Eijk. In November 1993, in a ditch near the village of Entermel, the corpse of a 23-year-old prostitute was found. It turned out to be Michelle Fator. During sex, Van Eijk strangled her with her bare hands. On the 21st of January 1995, the body of 31-year-old prostitute Annelies Reinder was found in an Eemskanaal canal near Amsterdam. Between his release and his second arrest, there were 8 prostitutes and several other young women murdered in and around the area of Van Eijk's residence. In 1997, Van Eijk was a suspect for the murder of Andy Reuter de Wilt, and in 2000 for the murder of Marianne Vestra, discussed in the first case. However, DNA test evidence proved his innocence. Several years later, both murders of 2 women were caught. On the 17th of July 2001, the lifeless naked body of 34-year-old prostitute Sasha Schenker was found near Harkstede. Her clothes were found several months later near Van Eijk's house. They were found to have been thrown into the canal in a plastic bag weighted with stones. Because Schenker's clothes were found near Van Eijk's house, he became a prime suspect, and on the 12th of November 2001, police arrested Van Eijk. He soon confessed to the murders of Michel Fatal, Annelies Reinders and Saskia Schenker. Police also suspected him of the murders of Shirley Helgers, Antoine Bonnet and Julian Meager. However, Van Eijk did not confess to these, and there were no concrete evidence for his involvement. The ground around his house was evacuated, however there was no bodies found. As of 2013, Jolanda Meir is still missing. At the start of his trial, Van Eijk was represented by William Anker, much to the astonishment of the relatives of Shirley Helgers, as William Anker also represented them. When Van Eijk was officially declared a suspect in murdering Shirley, William Anker dropped his client. After going through a series of other lawyers, Van Eijk was sentenced on the 7th of November 2002 to life imprisonment for the murder of the last 3 victims. Van Eijk appealed, but the Supreme Court of Netherlands upheld the ruling. Van Eijk several times requested clemency, which in the Netherlands can only be given by the head of state, and all requests were denied. In July 2019, it was revealed that Van Eijk had died in prison on the 19th of June 2019. The last hometown murder case we're looking at is Willem Hollender. He was born the 29th of May 1958, and he was nicknamed the Nose because of the size of his nose. In 1983, Hollander was sentenced to 11 years imprisonment for his involvement in the kidnapping of Heineken president Freddy Heineken for 35 million gulden, which is approximately 16 million euros. Then in 2007, Hollander was sentenced to 9 years in prison for several counts of extortion, including the extortion of Willem Estrada, who was murdered in 2004 after falling out with Hollander. He served his sentence in Volksved and was released on the 27th of January 2012. He was arrested again in May 2013, released 12th of June 2013, and he was sentenced to life in prison after that in July 2019 for the murders and 1 count of manslaughter. Hollander was the son of Wim Hollander, an employee of the Heineken breweries, who found his job because of alcoholism. As a teenager, he, along with his classmate Cor van Hout, was part of a gang that worked for ganglands and landlords evicting squatters and may have been involved in several robberies. Cor van Hout was later to become his brother-in-law by marrying Hollander's sister Sonia. In 1983, their relatively unknown gang abducted the Heineken heir Freddy Heineken, along with his driver Ab Dodura. Ultimately, their demand for 16 million euros was met by the family, although the police were against it. After Heineken's release, the kidnappers Cor van Hout, William Hollander, Jan Bolland, Frans Mierger and Martin Ursamps were all eventually traced and served prison sentences. During this period, Hollander met many other gangsters, including Dennis Stewart and Yvonne Lonswicks, who were later accused of ordering the murder of Hollander's brother-in-law and co-criminal Cor van Hout. After serving the Heineken sentence, Hollander emerged as a high-profile criminal leader. Several million of Heineken's ransoms were never traced, and many have been part of an initial kitty for which he and Cor van Hout set up as an extortion empire. There were said to be up to 24 people in the crime ring. Initially, he was in a business relationship with real estate businessman Willem Estrada, possibly involving money laundering. After Cor van Hout was killed in 2003, Hollander fell out with Estrada. Estrada secretly testified to the police about Hollander, but he was shot dead near his office in 2004. It was suspected that Hollander, along with his partner in crime Dino Sorella, ordered the murder of both Wilhelm Estrada and John Murimet, who was shot in Thailand on 2nd of November 2005. Hollander's name keeps turning up in connection with all three suspects in the Estrada murder: Ali N. C. Osgur of Alkmaar and Cleon D. from Aalsmeer, who had been released. According to Estrada, Hollander was involved in 25 murders, including that of Cor van Hout. The Dutch newspaper De Telegraaf reported on the 16th of July 2006 that Hollander and Van der Hout had planned to kidnap Prince Bernhard instead of Freddie Heineken in the 1980s. Thomas van der Bijl, who was murdered in his bar in Amsterdam in April 2006, made these allegations in a disposition before the Dutch National Police. Hollander's 2006 trial was dubbed the trial of the century. His lawyer Bram Moskovic argued that media descriptions of Hollander as one of the top criminals had prejudiced the case against him. However, he was forced to resign after media allegations of conflict of interest, since he'd also been the lawyer of Willem Estrada. Among the witnesses in the trial was lawyer Bram Vigers, who testifies that Hollander had been extorting millions of euros from Estrada between 2000 and 2004. A week after the testimony, Vigers was found dead of a drug overdose. In late 2007, Hollander underwent a heart valve surgery. Initially, reports of his failing health was thought to be of a hoax, but present medical opinion appears to suggest that he was indeed in poor health and may not survive the present sentence. While he was under detention in 2008, he was also arrested for alleged involvement in the murder of Yugoslav drug dealer Serge Marinovic in 2006. Hollander was found guilty of extortion and sentenced to 9 years in prison, at a time held in Neum-Vosveld. His subsequent appeal was turned down by the appeals court in July 2009. Hollander was released from Dieche prison in Rotterdam on the 27th of January 2012 after serving 2/3 of his 9-year term. He had been due to be released on the 31st of January, but was let out early to avoid publicity. After his release, he appeared on the television in the show College Tour in 2012. He also made a record named Willem is Terug, William is Back, in September 2012, together with Lars Frans, a Dutch rapper. Various politicians condemned his appearance because Hollander should not become a cult hero. In addition, from September 2012 until 7th of March 2013, Hollander wrote a weekly column for the Dutch magazine New Review. In February 2013, Hollander was a co-founder of a motorcycle club, No Surrender MC, and served as vice president of Amsterdam branch. In May 2013, Hollander was arrested in a large operation involving 450 police and army personnel. He was suspected of extortion. The victim of the alleged extortion was Theo Husman, who was the ex-president of the Amsterdam chapter of the Hells Angel Holland. On the 12th of June 2013, Hollander was released from prison but remains a suspect in the case. Back in jail in May 2015, it became known that Hollander knew who was involved in the murder of his brother-in-law, Cor van Hout. His sister Astrid, a criminal lawyer, feared that Hollander plans to assassinate her, and she was proposed to assist in his prosecution. While visiting him in prison, she secretly recorded his confession and handed it to the police. In April 2016, Hollander was arrested again while still in prison for allegedly soliciting two members of the gang to kill his sisters Astrid and Sonia, and Peter van de Vries, who was also a witness in the mega trial. Hollander dismissed this charge as nonsense, insisting it was not in his interest to kill his sisters. The gang member who had informed the authorities about the plot subsequently recanted his confession, though Astrid believes that he did so because he was also afraid of her brother. In July 2019, the court in Amsterdam convicted Hollander after a lengthy and extensive trial. At the age of 61, to life imprisonment for the murder in a series of 5 murders, including of his former friend and criminal associate Cor Van Hout, and 1 of manslaughter, thus following the demand of the prosecutor and brushing off his denials. He was also found guilty in 2002 of the attempted murder of John Muramet, Klepper's business partner, later shot dead in Thailand, 2005, and of more ordinary manslaughter of Robert Ter Hack, who died of bullet wounds in the murder of Cor Van Hout. Thank you for everybody who's listened to this episode. This episode has been researched, written and hosted by me, Andrew Knight. Sound, music and editing has been provided by Harry Edmondson. Make sure you subscribe to the show anywhere where you listen to your podcast. This allows the episode to be downloaded automatically as soon as it's released. Please reach out to us on the social media. We're at Hometown Murders on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Please support the show by leaving a 5-star rating or a review. It really does help